And we're back. This is our last one. This is slow. It's a little different. So similar to less, now we're just focusing more on slow. So in this section, we're going to talk all about carbon dioxide. I might call it CO2 as well. And it's probably one of the most understood gases out there. It's one of the ones that I got to know well in my respiratory days. And there's actually a lot of really restorative properties of what is often referred to as a toxic gas. So there's actually 100 times more CO2 than oxygen in our body, and most of us actually need more of it. We can use it to sharpen our minds, it helps us burn fat, and it helps us heal disease. It is a powerful, powerful thing to have in our systems. So we have a lot of gaps in our knowledge. This is not going to come as news to you. So as a society, we are very good at identifying pathologies, treating symptoms, not so good necessarily getting into the root cause of what causes disease or pathologies within us. So we often don't really pay attention to the muscles that do our breathing. The best way to prevent a lot of health issues and to improve our athletic performance, just to extend our longevity, is to really focus on how we breathe and just balance these oxygen and carbon dioxide levels in our body. Again, that stasis, finding the right balance for you. And it's just learning how to breathe in and out slowly. We tend to just be so rushed like we are at everything that we do. So the way this works is we have smaller volumes of air, which helps increase the CO2 that's in our system, which actually then increases the amount of oxygen that's available for your tissues and organs. And it might sound a little counterintuitive, but it's actually what happens, and we're going to get into it. So in the end of it, like everything, you always want to do less and get more from it. So let's talk about kind of our lungs and some tubes and stuff like that. So our body is just a collection of tubes. You've got some wide ones like your throat and your sinuses, and then you've got your thin ones like your capillaries. So our lungs are made up of lots of them. So if I read this, I thought it was really funny. So if you lined up all of the small tubes in our lungs, they would go from New York City to Key West, so more than 1,500 miles, whatever that is in kilometers, I have no idea. So each breath you take in, it's going to go through this whole pathway. So coming in through your throat, so a wide tube, it comes down your windpipe or your trachea, and it hits what we call the tracheal-carinal crossroads in here. So that's the carina is where it branches into your left and right lung. So then it either goes into the right or the left, depending on what's going on. And then it dead ends at what we call the alveoli. They look like, I always describe them as bunches of grapes. So they're small little sacs that are just at the end of your lungs. So it starts big and filters all the way down into these very small little bulbs. So each of those alveoli is like a docking station. So oxygen passes through it. It goes into a red blood cell on the other side, and then it's carried off into the body. So each of those red blood cells has a protein on it called hemoglobin. And then from there, the blood flows through all the tissues and muscles through your body. The oxygen leaves that red blood cell when it gets to wherever it's going, and the CO2 comes into the red blood cell. Once it's full, once it's gone around, it's picked up all the red blood cells it can, it goes back to the lungs, and then the CO2 exits when you breathe out, and new oxygen goes in. So every healthy cell in our body, is fueled by oxygen. And it takes 1 minute just for this process to happen. So it's crazy. Let me throw some numbers at you. So in your body, if everything is working as it should, you have 25 trillion red blood cells. Each one has 270 million hemoglobin, and each hemoglobin can carry 4 oxygen molecules. So that's 1 billion oxygen molecules per red blood cell. Crazy, eh? It's huge. Okay, let's talk about, we'll call it the secret of us, maybe. Maybe we'll just call it our little secret. So every molecule of CO2 that you breathe out has weight. And this is how your body loses weight for the most part. So for every 10 pounds of fat that's lost from your body, 8.5 pounds of that is coming through your lungs and breathing out that CO2. The rest is coming through sweat and urine, so not a whole lot. So all those sweaty, crazy workouts that you think are releasing a whole lot of fat, some, not as much as you think. It's more the breathing in and out that you're doing. So really, it is the weight regulating system of the body, is our breath. So look how much control we have over something that is often a very elusive goal for many of us. Let's sink in. All those crazy things we do, we have a lot of control over it by slowing our breathing down, creating some balance, having a relaxed nervous system. We come back to that. All right. Healthy body is always going to have enough oxygen, regardless of how many breaths you take. But we do need more CO2. It's insane how much we actually need more of it. We just breathe so much of it out that it's not help. That's not it. But what it does is it takes it away from the things that it does for us. So let's talk about what some of those are. So CO2 helps release oxygen from the hemoglobin. So if there's not enough CO2 around, because you've been over breathing and it's all gone, the oxygen will actually stick to that hemoglobin and it may not get off where it's needed. CO2 also has a profound effect on dilating vessels. That helps open its pathways. It helps carry more blood to those hungry cells. And so again, breathing less, this is in studies, breathing less has allowed animals to produce more energy more efficiently. And you can try this yourself when you're ready and feel like you might want to do it, but it doesn't take much, more than a few moments of just breathing above your metabolic needs before you're going to reduce blood flow. You're going to feel a little lightheaded. You might even cramp up and get a headache, and eventually you'd black out. You know what it feels like. It doesn't feel good. And if tissues are denied blood flow for long enough, they will break down and die. So he said you can skate by with a little less oxygen, but that CO2 is super important. It's also really essential as like a vitamin in a way. So oxygen isn't a stimulant to a living creature. So if you're inhaling pure oxygen, it's not really going to do a whole lot for your body. It might increase it a little bit by about 1 to 2%, but most of it you just breathe out. You're not actually getting it into those cells that you think really need them. And that mild hyperventilation, that overbreathing is chronic. So we're often breathing above our metabolic needs. So it's no wonder weight loss is stubborn. Crazy, isn't it? I know I can hear the wheels turning. Let that sink in. Right. Here's a little bit about how this works too. So when we're breathing normally, remember that 12 to 20 breaths per minute, which we now know is much higher than it really should be, we only absorb about 25% of the oxygen from the air. Most of it, like I said before, is just exhaled. So this is why when you start taking the slower breaths, you actually decrease the flow that's in the system. So it gives the system more time to soak up the oxygen. And here's where we're going to get a little deep. So slow oxygen goes by another name of prayer. So if you're familiar with the traditional chant of Om, it's 6 seconds. So it's 6 seconds followed by a pause of 6 seconds to inhale. So you inhale for 6 seconds and then exhale for 6 seconds as you're chanting. Many of you are probably familiar with that. And there's other cultures and religions that do very similar techniques, but they're all basically the same breathing pattern, same calming effect on the body. Imagine that. So again, it takes some practice. When we talked about it before, about the less inhale, so that taking less air in, it feels uncomfortable. It's the same for this. You want to practice just by extending those exhales by 1 second, like we talked about before. And again, you practice 5-10 minutes a day. Let it be uncomfortable for that 5-10 minutes. You might get sweaty, you might feel gross, but it has really potent effects. And those benefits are just like meditation or just like yoga. They, you might be uncomfortable for 5-10 minutes, but it has effects for the rest of the day while you're not doing it. There's a magic number. I'm trying to remember where I wrote this down. And it's that, 5.5 or 6, whatever you want to do. So that 5.5 second inhale, that 5.5 second exhale will then get you to about 5.5 breaths per minute, which is kind of that magic number where, which we could be, and we're not going to be there all the time. It's just something to shoot towards. It's going to take some work. Like I said, we tend to all be over breathers. We are conditioned to be like that. So this is not something you're going to fix like this. It's like everything. You just practice when you can. When you've got some moments, do some conscious, intentional breathing and start reaping the effects. So hopefully that gave you some new things to think about, just a new way of thinking about how much control you actually have over your health with something as simple as your breath. All right, so if you've got any comments, questions, hit me up in the comments here. See you again soon. Bye.